how are you today? So today we are going to discuss all things alcohol markers. I absolutely love my alcohol markers. They are definitely my medium of choice when I sit down to do any form of colouring. And my favourite brand, I have made no secret about this over the years, are Copic'c. I love my Copic'c and it's always what I reach for when I go to colour. But when people ask me, as they do, what is the best brand out there, that is my automatic response. My automatic response is Copic'c. But I am met with the same response. It sounds lovely, they sound great, they're just not in my budget, I can't afford them. So I thought today, let's compare a few different types of brands and see if we can find the best alternative to Copic'c that could work for you. So to create this video, the first thing I did was sit down and do a lot of research into various alcohol markers. I did watch Jazza's guide to alcohol markers. It's a two-part video where he literally compares every single alcohol marker on the planet. I would love to be able to do that for you, but my budget doesn't quite stretch to that. I was delighted, however, when the results of that massive comparison did put Copic'c on top, because as we know, they are my favourite. But what came in second was a brand called YooHoo Markers. Now this is a brand that I have been seeing more and more on YouTube, and lots of YouTube artists are using this brand of pen. When I researched it a bit more, they are being hailed as the best alternative to Copic'c, so I had to give it a try. So of course that meant I had to go shopping for art supplies. So I went and hit Amazon and got myself some YooHoo markers. Now, when I first thought about doing this video, I had checked the costings of things and I'd intended to get a set of 32 markers as it wasn't too horrific price-wise. But as I was thinking about it, they had no skin tones in that particular set, and I mostly colour characters. So you could get a bundle that just had the skin tones in it, but the cost per pen was more expensive doing it that way than buying the bigger set of YooHoo markers. So I then thought, well, I'll get the 64 set, but then there was still no skin tones. So then I thought, fine, I'll get the 110 set, because that one did have the skin tones in it. But then once I got to that price, I sort of realised, well, for £20 more, can I get the 210 set? So that is what I did. I went from buying 30 odd to buying 210. I am a colour magpie. Definitely my weakness. Anyway, so they arrived. I was very excited to see them when they all arrived, and I had a lovely time swatching them all out. So after swatching it out, this is what I have been left with, and I did come across a couple of things that do really bother me. The colouring system makes no sense whatsoever, and no matter what research I did, I couldn't find anything that explained the colouring system. I feel like they started off with so many colours and then added some later, because we have a purple blue, which I kind of get, but then we also have violet and we have purple. So I don't see, if you've got an RV, why you need a purple blue. And the same with, I don't see why if you've got an RV you need a purple, but I can live with that. I do, however, have issues. So this has been made by Misty Sparkling Creations, this chart. And her explanation of it is that you've got the colour family and then the sequence in the colour family. So if we go at that, these are all R's, which means they should be red. So in sequence, we have R11, which is like a violet. We've got R12, which is slightly orangey. We've got R13, which looks blue. And then we've got R14 and R15, which are back in the pink tones. If that is the same colour family, but changing an intensity of colour, that makes no sense. It's not enough to put me off using them, but I do think that I will need to sort of re-swatch these out in a way that actually makes sense, because I can't make head nor tail of the colouring system. So it's not something that I thought I would ever need to review with pens or that was important, but I've decided it does bother me quite a bit, so it is something that I checked with some of the other pens that we tried out. So I am based in the UK, which means that the place that you can get budget art supplies is B&M Bargains or The Works. These pens, these twin markers, are available at both of those stores. They work out at between 33p or 50p per pen. And in all honesty, I hate them. Even at the stage where I was swatching them out, they were absolutely horrible. As I was swatching, so that's colouring these tiny little squares, as I was swatching, the nibs were fraying. Some of the nibs were even falling out. I don't think they're particularly ergonomically comfortable, so they weren't particularly comfortable to use. I did end up putting these through their paces like I did with all the other pens. We are going to look at blending, flicking, colouring an image. I really do give everything the best chance possible, but honestly these just came out with horrible results, and I genuinely would not recommend these for anyone. If you were to get these, you're going to colour something in and it's going to feel horrible and you're going to hate the way it looks and then feel bad about yourself and your art and your skills. And it's not worth going down that route, genuinely. I had planned to pass these on to my daughter because she loves her art as well. Some of her Pro markers were drying out, so I thought this could replace them. I will not be giving them to her because I just know that she's going to be so upset with what she produces. So I do feel that it is best to get the best that you can afford, because then you will be more happy with your artwork. But genuinely, I wouldn't even consider these pens. That is my personal opinion, and you're very entitled to disagree with it. But if you are wanting to look at this video for recommendations, definitely do not recommend these pens. So the other pens that I am looking at in this video are Promarkers, Hobbycraft markers and Spectrum Noir markers. Now for each of these markers I swatched them out, I did a blend test. I also tried flicking with the nibs because I use that technique a lot when colouring hair or fur on various characters, so the ability to have a nice flick is really important to me. I also looked at the colour chart, how easy that was to read. I looked at whether there was refills available or single pens available. I looked at how ergonomic the pens were, and I also looked at the quality of the nib. As I went through all of these tests, I wrote all my notes down in a notebook, and here are the results. Okay, so let's start off with Copic'c markers. Copic'c markers cost between $6.99 and $3.39 per pen, and that is because you have your sketch at $6.99 and your chow at $3.39. The difference between a sketch and a chow is just the size and shape of the barrel, and it just purely means that there is more ink in a sketch than there is in a chow, and that is the difference between your price points. There are 358 Copic'c colours. They blend beautifully. They have a really understandable colour system that you can actually research and learn to follow. The nibs are brilliant to use. They've got a lovely flickability. You can get refills for them and individual pens, which means they are easy to replace. They are ergonomic, and yeah, I love them. So these are my pen of choice. Okay, so we now have our Pro markers. These cost £2.75 per pen. There are 196 colours. I found that they blend very well. They've got a good understandable colour system. The nib is good, especially if you buy the brush nib and not the bullet nib. You can't seem to get refills, but you can buy these as singles, so it is possible to replace an individual pen as opposed to have to buy a whole set. I personally don't find them particularly ergonomic. I struggle with my hand because I'm an artist. I use it a lot, and quite often I need strapped up, and so I find them a bit more difficult to use. But yeah, that is the review of the Pro markers. Okay, so next we have the Hobbycraft markers. Now there are only 42 colours in this, which I am a little bit gutted about because I really like using this pen. They blend really nicely. Unfortunately, their colour system is non-existent. You've literally just got the colour at the top of the cap to go by. It's not even numbered, which would make swatching and things like that a little bit more difficult. They do blend really nicely. Obviously, you can't get refills or individual pens. They are really ergonomic. They feel a lot more like Copic'c than any other marker that I tried whilst using them. Yeah, so that is the review of those ones. So the Spectrum Noir markers, they are $1.65 per pen. They come in 216 colours. They do blend well and they have a very understandable colour system. I have actually managed to find refills. So I know that they always said refills were available, but they seem to be impossible to find. But I did actually find refills fairly easily in the UK. So that is good. I do not find them ergonomic at all. I don't like this shape of barrel at all. Out of all the pens that I've tried, this is my least favourite. As I said, I do quite often have to wear a support in my hand, and these pens are just not comfortable for me. This is very much a personal thing, so it's whether you prefer a chunkier pen or a thin pen, but personally for me, even though the rest of it is good, the fact that we have refills and the fact that everything else works fairly well, I just don't find them comfortable to use, which means I probably wouldn't use them because I wouldn't be enjoying the process of colouring. So that is everything to do with Spectrum Noirs. Well, I think we know how we feel about this one. So the only tick that this one got was the fact that it was 33p to 50p per pen. But genuinely, I don't even think it's worth that. You know the expression buy cheap, buy twice? I think that's exactly what you would do if you had these pens. So these pens come in 60 different colours. I don't think they blend well. There's not enough pens here for me to judge the colour system. You can't get refills. Again, like the Spectrum Noirs, they are not ergonomic. They're a very square barrel. I find them uncomfortable to use, but they're not quite as uncomfortable as a Spectrum Noir. The nibs, as we have discussed, are absolutely horrific. They were literally fraying as I used them and falling out. So I think that's all there is to say on those. And so finally we have the YooHoo markers. So these work out approximately £1.49 per pen. There are 344 colours available, which is only 14 less than Copic'c. So that is the best colour range to any of the other brands. They do blend really well. I do feel their colour system is questionable. I don't know why we need a brown and an earth. We have these colours here. This is meant to be purple blue, and we have these colours here that are clearly teal, so they should be in blue green. This one's even called teal. And as I said, this bit just really bothers me. How you can have a like mauve colour, an orangey red, a blue and a pink and say they're all part of the same colour family, I don't know, but I can live with that. At the minute, you can get refills in single pens in the States. They are not easily available or readily available, but hopefully if this company continues to grow, that we might manage to see that in other parts of the world as well. They are ergonomic. I do find them incredibly comfortable. They're the most similar to Copic'c other than the Hobbycraft ones, and they do have a really good nib, although it is a bit firmer than a Copic'c nib. But yeah, that's the YooHoo markers. So I am really surprised at how I feel about the various markers that I have tested today. If I was to pick my favourite alternative to Copic'c, I would actually go with these Hobbycraft pens. They feel the same in your hand, the nib feels the same, it's nice and soft, they blend beautifully. However, they only come in 40 odd colours. I have these skin tone ones, so the colours are quite close together, which meant they were quite easy to blend. I'm not sure if I was to get the other colour packs how I would feel, so I might go and get some and experiment a bit more with that. So by default, just because these don't come in more colours, I would have to go with the YooHoo markers because we've got over 300 of these and they are closest to the Copic'c in the colours available. The only difference between these and these that makes me go for these is just the fact that the nib is a lot firmer on this. The brush nib is much firmer than the Copic'c. So I have linked to all the different pens that I have used in the description box below. Those that go to Amazon, they are affiliate links, so it doesn't make any difference to you if you do choose to buy some pens, but it just means I earn a tiny commission. Now in review, I just want to go back to my beloved Copic'cs. I still believe that these are the best pens out there. Many of these pens here I have had for over 20 years. I have never replaced a pen. I have never replaced a nib. I do look after my pens, and there will be a video coming soon about how to maintain your alcohol markers. So I do look after my pens, and I think once you start getting to the stage where you have refilled them many times, although the initial price of maybe $6.99 is a bit gulp, the longevity and the fact that I've not had to keep buying a brand new pen or a set of pens to replace a colour gradually brings that price point down. And so I think long term these actually work out more economical, but it depends what you are wanting. I think if colouring is not a big thing in your crafting world, if it's a small element to the other crafts that you enjoy, then these other brands would be great. If you are starting out and don't have all the colours, then I think again this is a really great way. I didn't buy all of these in a winner. I bought a dark, a mid and a light of a colour tone, and then a few months later I would buy another dark, mid, light, and I gradually built up my collection. But if you want all the colours at once, then something like the YooHoo markers would be a great starting point. What I would say is that, like for example, this pink would end up being one of my favourite colours, and I'm sure that I would run out of ink at some point in time. So I would possibly consider, if that is happening to you, that rather than buy a whole set of pens, that you buy the coordinating pen in a Copic'c, because then you can refill it. So it means you've got a great starter kit, and then you could gradually sort of fill out your favourites with Copic'c markers. I do also appreciate that today's review, I've done swatching, I've done blending, I've looked at facts and figures, but I've not sort of used them long term. I did use the YooHoo markers to make the packaging for my latest stamps that are coming out in August, and I got on absolutely fine with them. But what I'm going to continue to do is to use all of these pens for the next 6 months or so on a regular basis, and come back to you with how I feel about them 6 months down the line. If you enjoy colouring, you might want to check out some of my other craft videos where I have used pens to create various craft projects, and you can check these out right here.